Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Obviously, it's a good segue from the sermon I preached this morning to be talking about these issues. Obviously, we are really honored to have Gillian Gonda from New Mexico Water Advocates coming to talk to us this morning, specifically talking about what's going on with the Rio Grande watershed, kind of the impacts of water across our state. As you all know, that's a big river. And, obviously has really critical implications to not just communities, but also wildlife, ecosystems, kind of the whole sense of life in our state as a whole. So we are really grateful. Obviously, within our tradition, water is a really critical thing, right? We have water through baptism is one of our two holy sacraments. And I always say to folks, what is the meaning of baptism, which is about cleansing and forgiveness and a sense of being adopted into God's family, if there's no water to baptize people with, if there's no clean water, what does purification even mean in that sacramental tradition, right? So you're talking about water quality, you're talking about water quantity, and that's so critical to us as people of faith. And we've got to kind of remember those essential elements as we're dealing with some of the bigger impacts around climate and the way water is being used in the West. And as I was out there presenting in Arkansas, of course, they have a lot of water and face very different issues than we were facing, but some similar. And I always tell people, that old line about how whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting out West. They kind of they appreciated that line because, for them, they got an abundance of water and don't understand lines like that. But, that's the serious kind of nature of water here in the West. So we were really grateful to have you and let you introduce yourself and certainly take it away. And it's an informal group. Folks, we can kind of pepper you with questions. And thank you for coming and talking about what you're talking about.
Great. Thank you so much. Really an honor to be here. And I understand there might be at least one online, maybe a few more. So happy to welcome you as well. And thank you so much for coming to this. It's really an honor to be here. I've said to a few folks that this is sadly my first time in the church, and that's really a shame. I lived, when I first moved to Santa Fe 3 years ago, I lived down on Rosario Hill. And of course, this was my walking area, and just such a beautiful, striking piece of architecture, and I'm really glad to be with you people inside. I am Gillian. I am from the New Mexico Water Advocates as a board member. We are a volunteer-run, I should be right here. We are a volunteer-run organization, and we have been around, since the 80s, known as the Water Ambassadors, as an organization that really started to put forward long-term water planning efforts for the state, and working with the Office of the State Engineer, with the Interstate Stream Commission, and unfortunately, over the years, putting forward amazing plans and not quite getting that over the finish line. So it continues to be our work today. I am involved. I will just give you this big caveat right now. We're going to talk about some fairly technical things today that have to do with the Rio Grande Water Compact, which is an interstate compact, an agreement between Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas, and how much water from the Rio Grande comes through to these different portions of New Mexico and then to Texas. It's going to have some technical data in it. Don't worry, I'm going to explain it. I am not a scientist. I am not a technical person. I spent my career in storytelling and media for the most part. Began at KNME, the public television station in Albuquerque, at the age of 18. Worked in public broadcasting for a good 20 years in Albuquerque and then Atlanta, Georgia. And then I moved to the foundation world. I worked for philanthropy in Michigan for 15 years, where there's a lot of water. It was kind of interesting growing up here, and I'll mention why I'm connected to water here in New Mexico in a minute. But lived in Michigan for about 15 years, working for a really interesting foundation. I normally don't bring this up, but I'm bringing it up in this organization for what will become obvious reasons. The foundation was, its mission, the Fetzer Institute, its mission was to build a spiritual foundation for a loving world. So really heart-centered spiritual work. And one of my projects during my time there was looking at the connection between your spiritual life and your civic engagement. And lo and behold, we found over 2 very massive national studies surveying over 3,000 people for each study, that the more you're aware of your spiritual life and bring it into your daily actions, the more you're involved with your civic life, and that there's just a high correlation between these two. So you're here for a reason, and you're here in this space for a reason. And there is such a strong connection. So I just want to applaud you for being not only just part of the services here, but feeling how that goes out into your world, into your community. So that's not normally something I bring into the conversation, but this is definitely a space to mention that part of my career in life. So I grew up in Placitas, New Mexico, which is, who's been to Placitas? I just talked to somebody who said, I know of it, but I've never been there. It's not really a destination place, but it's one of those, beautiful New Mexico little villages. And New Mexico, like Placitas, like many in New Mexico, has a very thriving acequia and a very thriving acequia community. Placitas, unlike any in acequia in the state, is the only one that is both an irrigation acequia and a domestic water acequia. So it feeds about, it serves about 200 homes right in the village of Placitas. And my mother, Carolyn Kennedy, is the president of the Village Water Board. I grew up right in the village and just understood from a very young age what it meant, what the acequia meant to the community, how they came together for ditch digging days, and how this, precious resource was shared. So it was really wonderful that I kind of had that in my blood, so to speak. Again, lived in Atlanta, lived in Michigan, had a life-changing moment. My husband passed away from cancer, and New Mexico is my heart home, healing home. Everything about it is healing and beautiful. Even this dry desert, right? We know the water replenishes it, but it is itself a healing space. So I came home 3 years ago, and my mom, who was on was, as I said, the president of the Village Water Board, was also on this board. I've done communications work my whole life, and she said, we really need you. And I've been there ever since. So it was a long introduction, but I just wanted to give you some context of my life, why I feel connected to this presentation, to this group, and why I'm involved with water. So as I said, this is going to be a little bit technical. I appreciate your questions. Please feel free to ask during the presentation so I can clarify anything, and then we'll have some time afterwards as well. Sound good? Any questions before I start? You're a great group. Okay, so our mission at the Water Advocates, to advocate for a balanced, equitable, and resilient water future for all of New Mexico through public education and civic engagement. So a couple of things there to point out. Balanced, equitable, and resilient. This word resilient is so critical. We've sometimes talked about security, but resilient goes a little bit further and really points to the adaptation that we all need to have. There is less water, and we're going to have to move into a place where we can thrive and survive and share the water that we have and be resilient in the process, not lose anything in the process. That's what I think that resiliency speaks to, that we're able to share and be equitable, but not be less off, that everyone is lifted when we're all resilient in sharing this resource. So those words mean something in our mission. Public education and civic engagement. We've just really moved more into our public education. We do monthly workshops. Are any of you aware of the New Mexico Water Advocates? I should ask that. One for me. Thank you. And you knew someone who was at or what was the conference that you were mentioning?
The Presbyterian San Diego.
Albuquerque.
I held an earth care workshop in Albuquerque, like back in April.
Yes.
We helped support that.
Yes. And I think you mentioned that likely our president, Norm Gom,
yeah,
who was a former director of the Interstate Stream Commission, which is one of the critical agencies in New Mexico to manage water some years ago, but he's been our president the last 3 years. Very advocate, very active, very incredible, which is his awareness. He's a water engineer. He knows this stuff through and through. So that's likely where we met. But okay, so back to the public education and the New Mexico Water Advocates and what we're doing right now. So we have monthly workshops. from a variety of, topics that are all dealing with water of some sort. We just had a really successful workshop last week looking at, and I'll probably mention this again later, looking at the Jupiter project. Have you ever heard of the Jupiter project in Doñana County? Right, yes, thumbs down from the row in the back. I'm with you. So yeah, this data center that's being proposed is quite egregious with both how they've gone about this potential of this data center. There's now a lawsuit that's been put forward by the community there, but also just the amount of electricity and water that we know these data centers are using. Now they're proposing that they'll be using recycled water within the plant. Mostly these data centers have been using fresh water, but I'm sorry to say that the track record of the truth from these from these corporations is not good. So that's part of our public engagement. I'm just speaking of a workshop we just had. We have past workshops on our website, and we continue to try to show up where we can. As I said, we're a volunteer run, so can't be everywhere at once, but this is the kind of work that we try to do. Civic engagement is of a sort of different track. Please join us. Yes, hello, welcome. No problem. Yes. Our civic engagement efforts really have to do with the work of the legislature, the work of the Interstate Stream Commission, as I mentioned, and the work of the Office of the State Engineer, which is what the ISC, the Interstate Stream Commission, is under. The civic engagement we do is really working alongside, trying to support what they're doing in terms of water planning or advocate for better water planning. We work quite a bit during the legislative session every year to look for more funding for water planning in the state, for better science, and the list goes on. So that's our civic engagement work. So no surprise here, maybe to this group. And maybe if it is a surprise to you, I'll just underscore it. New Mexico has statewide water issues. I'll be speaking to this first point quite a bit today. Our water usage exceeds legally allowed quantities. We have insufficient public and governmental attention. There are many issues that the state faces, but unfortunately, water has been on the bottom of the list for too long. The reductions in available renewable river water are growing. Reductions meaning through climate change and overuse, we do not have as much in our rivers. There is a rapid depletion of non-renewable groundwater, so in our deeper aquifers. We also have a lack of measurement in the state to really know how much we have in these aquifers, which is very problematic when we know we're going to have less surface water. To know how much is really underneath is critical. We know this, unfortunately, there are human tendencies to protect self over community, but we know, and this is why I'm so happy to be speaking to you, the community can very much trump those efforts. And when we really come together, there's an opportunity to help see that the collective is necessary to overcome the greed that happens with the self. And all of this means that our consequences are growing as the years go by. It's going to be harder and harder to fix some of these issues. The rest of my presentation is really focused on just one problem, and that's the Rio Grande Compact and the crisis that we're going to be facing in the Middle Rio Grande. So the Rio Grande Compact, how many people are familiar with this compact? Excellent, great. There are several interstate compacts. This is one of the more critical ones, and it was established in 1938, as we all know, from Milagro-Binfa wars and many others. Water and our fights around water have been happening for a really long time. But at that time, there was some awareness that, okay, if we work together, we might be able to solve some of these problems and have an equitable means of sharing the water from coming from Colorado into New Mexico, down to lower state, and then into Texas. So it was a very complicated, it is a very complicated compact. It addresses how much water is stored, how much, what those boundaries are between the upper, the middle, and the lower Rio Grande. I'm going to show you a map in a minute that talks about that. how much water needs to be delivered across those boundaries, how we measure and keep track of the water, the criteria for when there's a violation, and paying attention to variable weather conditions from year to year, how that may change those requirements. So where we are right now, are you aware? How many are aware? We're about to violate this compact very, very quickly, unfortunately. So here's the map and where some of these key measurements are. The Rio Grande Compact requires the Middle Rio Grande region to deliver water annually from Ottawa Gauge to Elephant Butte. The stipulated amount is based on the annual inflow, so that's set every year. The Ottawa Gauge is in the Upper Rio Grande, so you can see it in that top part there. Does anyone know where that is? It's just, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, is it by Ottawa Bridge?
Yes, yes, yes. That's exactly where it is. Just 30 minutes from here toward Los Alamos. You can drive up there in that beautiful drive and you can see where this gauge is. So this is marking the beginning of the Upper Rio Grande, and then down at Elephant Butte is where the Lower Rio Grande cutoff is. So what our requirements are is delivering down to that measurement part, and then it's delivered down into the lower part of the state and into Texas.
Why was that gauge? Why was it chosen for that?
Why was it chosen?
Yeah, I mean, you got Coaching Dam below that, right?
I don't think I know. Don't know why. It is where the Chama comes into the Rio Grande, so I think that that's kind of a critical part of this. Both from the Rio Grande and the Chama coming in, so that's like that spot.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's probably geological reasons. Okay, so just to get a little bit, we're gonna sidetrack for just a minute to talk about some of the implications here. So every year there are over and under deliveries, sometimes based on what's happening weather-wise. If we have an incredible wet summer, a little bit of a monsoon season, sometimes we can over deliver water. And the whole compact kind of works year to year, looking at over deliveries and under deliveries. You have like credits and debits, and it should average out. But what has been happening, and you'll see, is that we're on a downward slide. So if we exceed this debit, this cumulative debit, it will violate the compact, and it will likely, because it's happened before. In fact, we just settled a lawsuit from Texas suing New Mexico over the lower part of this compact. Interstate lawsuit, cost of litigation, financial penalties, water delivery penalties, and loss of water management control. So, these may seem extreme, but this adds up to something really, really critical for the state. And it hurts us as taxpayers. So if you see down there in the bottom corner, this current litigation, which actually just got settled last month, cost us $100 million, to defend this from Texas, who was claiming that there was poor water measurement in the southern part of the state, but also there has been overuse. So anyway, that got settled, but $100 million does not change. That's significant for a state with our economy. Lawyers, expert studies, et cetera, et cetera. And then after the settlement, there's still penalty costs. And the way that this is managed by the Supreme Court, they're paying attention to this too. And New Mexico has been an egregious overuser, particularly in the Middle Rio Grande. So explain a little bit more technically about what is happening here. So our deliveries are measured in what's called acre feet, and they're measured in thousands of acre feet. So this figure here is 245,000 acre feet of water. 1 acre foot of water is about 326,000 gallons. I'll test you later, make sure you all remembered this. Enough to fill a football field filled to 1 foot depth. So that's a lot of water. And what you're seeing here, and it's going to be more visible in the next slide with the graph, but you're going to see this downward trend of how much we've delivered, what our balance looks like before there's an evaluation. So violation. So what this is really saying is back in 2011, we were 245,000 acre feet before a violation. In 2015, that was down to 200,000. Down to 2020, 104,000. Now, last year, we were at 76,000 before a violation.
Got a quick question. When you're talking about delivery, are you talking about delivery to Texas or just to delivery into the Rio Grande?
From that delivery from that point of the
From Ottawa to
yes.
Elephant Butte.
And then there's a new measurement that is from Elephant Butte down into the lower Rio Grande and into Texas. However, right, though that is measured at a different spot, and then there's other implications there, obviously, however much we're sending down to that spot is going to have implications for how much is sent down to Texas, right? So there's definitely the connection. So here's the stark reality, and you can see where it's going, right? So back up here, you know, this is where our credit is. We've been in the debit for some years now. This red line at the very bottom, that's the violation line. So we've been, you know, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, you know, we were doing pretty good. And then starting around 2019, it's been really, really significantly downward trend. And, you know, we can't say, oh my gosh, it's just the overuse in the middle Rio Grande. What's the more obvious reason? Yeah, climate. I mean, it has some impact, but that's not upstate as much, you know, where the water is coming from the mountains down into the, yeah. So the snowpack that we've had, you know, the past 10 years has declined significantly. Wish I had this image in here, and I think for future presentations, I'll put it in, that shows, you know, just 10, 15 years ago, what we expected, you know, like in December, January, February of the snowpack compared to the last few years, and how much less is there. So climate change is one of the biggest culprits of why there's not enough water coming down and the delivery. However, less water is coming in. What's staying the same? Usage, right? So there's a reason that we have less coming through, but we're not paying attention to that, and we're just using water as if, you know, it's always there. We always turn on the faucet and the water's there. Yes.
I have in mind that Santa Fe reduced its water usage dramatically, whereas other communities
Yes.
do not have.
Yes.
And super contagious.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
that
that's true.
there's a, yeah, I don't know all the particulars of Santa Fe's reductions, having just been here a few years. I don't know if Reverend Black or others may have more kind of current thoughts on that, but I think you're absolutely right that, you know, some have paid attention and are looking forward, but this is a statewide issue. And obviously these compacts are more than just one community. It's really affecting the whole state. So I hope it can be contagious.
On the Santa Fe side, I think the big thing is, you know, you're doing a lot more water efficiencies, right? It's trying to create efficiencies. And then, you know, I mean, I know the city's done a lot more to deal with their storage to issues, like get a lot, you know, you get a lot of these pipelines and upgrading infrastructure. There's a lot of water.
Mhm.
Too, right? Which is
Yes.
really important. If you're capture source, if you have problems, if you're using it before it gets to the customer.
That's right.
Or on the way to the customer. the
That's-
water lines, right? That's the big one that threat us up the church here today. You know, you lose a lot of water that way, but you're right. There's a lot of challenges around communities, and Santa Fe's growing.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I was wondering if there might be a legal approach to challenging climate change deniers who are affecting public policy, which are causing losses. And I really think that policy failure is the problem.
Yeah.
And I met a guy who's a psychologist it's in Marin County, and that's San Francisco, and then Silicon Valley. His job was to be hired by multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations to run potential executives who have had this psychological test. And I would like to introduce this as part of the dialogue on getting rid of bad government by having talented people. I had to take an integrity test at a gas station. So the oil industry is using this and we're going to capture its job. But I had to, review report the senator, the senators accepted drive. So basically, if you had a fellow employee who's still in candy bars, you turn them in. And so I think they should be run through a value psychological test, just like they do in the corporate world. This is another multi-trillion-dollar corporation.
Yeah.
And we have responsibilities to the people and all this other stuff. Obviously, it's not going like this, so why not impose some kind of challenges that you present?
Yeah. Well, I'll come to some of the solutions that we think can really help
I
with.
also have some, like I see the challenge is foresting the Gillian Desert, maybe some money could be applied so we could try that here.
There are so many amazing solutions out there
But our leadership is
It's not-
unwilling to
pay attention. Yeah.
Well, they're paying attention to the cash flow. We've got $1 billion
Yeah.
of oil equipment out there.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes.
so-
Did you?
The role of farmers.
Yeah.
And especially the
Yes.
orchards and the alternative to flooding the field to
Yep.
irrigation.
Yep.
What is being done?
Well, I know that Healthy Soil Initiatives for the state have done some incredible work, but at a very small scale to look at more regenerative farming habits. And unfortunately, these crops, continue to also be an economic driver. And I'll get to a moment and you won't be surprised of how much of New Mexico of our water is used for farming and agriculture. So one moment to that. I do want to point out to where that very last bullet, that will be at only 37 cubic acre feet before violation. So see the spot that we're at right now. In fact, we are now 32 to 35,000 this month before violation. There's no question that we're going to be in violation next year, but there are some things that we can do with our voice and our efforts. So let's just look.
19 to 20, because that looks like that dropped like almost more than twice any other drop.
Yeah, it was a significant drop. I know that there was some climate issues at the time that were significant. And again, this continues to be what is causing the most of the less water coming through and downstate. There wasn't necessarily, though the overuse has continued, there wasn't necessarily like big, like, oh my gosh, then this, industry started. It really had to do with the climate. So to remain compliant, can we do it? We have to reduce our overuse. I don't want to be pessimistic and say like we may have to drop to a bottom again before we can figure out how, we work together. But we all contribute to this problem. We can all create the solutions that we need, and we can do it. I have some confidence. What are the sectors that use water? I'm wondering what you think the top one is. Yes.
Are we fracking? Fracking is like notoriously, and how much of what goes into Texas also goes into fracking?
Right.
Because South Texas is fracking like crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
this
so-
has, I think, contaminated water. at this
Yeah.
time, so they're fracking at Sandoval.
Yeah.
County. It's probably
Yeah. These are valid and significant concerns, particularly with what we don't know about what fracking is doing to the aquifers. And this goes back to some of our antiquated water data and water science. One of the legislations, one of the bills that was passed in 2019 is the Water Data Act, which is to modernize all of our measurement of water throughout the state and including the aquifers. It has not been fully funded.
What year was that?
That was 2019. And then, and I'll speak to this a little bit later, the 2023 Water Security Planning Act, which has significant potential for water planning in the state based on hydrological reality for the regions of the state, not funded. So unanimously passed. Everyone was so happy to pass this bill in 2023. Legislators just, oh, fabulous. How much money has gone into it? Barely, I don't know, less than $1 million. I think there's been some, but they need significant funding to get this off the ground.
Example of when you can attack to the courts. Like,
Yeah,
you
well,
voted yes, but
yeah.
you say no. So
Yeah,
back up your
what's
mind.
going on here?
Yeah, it's
And I'll
law.
speak to what's happening with ISC in a minute that can get there. So these are some of our biggest users. So irrigation, what percentage? For agriculture, irrigation for the state, what do you think? It's the highest user for sure. How much? 40%? 50%? 60%?
Wow.
70%? 80%? Yeah, for the state of New Mexico. And what are the top crops?
Alfalfa.
And pecans.
Chili.
I know, we are not gonna disparage our. Chili's a little lower. I'm sorry.
The second one is
Pecan. Pecans, yeah, in southern state. So yeah, over 700,000 square feet in New Mexico is used for agriculture and farming.
How many people benefit from that?
Well, I mean,
Not food, but economically.
yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I have that number, but I know it's significant that we do.
Hundreds or
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I think more than that in terms of like the economic drivers. So they're complicated equations, right? Like you can't just do away with agriculture given the percentage of its usage and how it benefits the state and how it benefits other people. But like the healthy soil initiative that was in the state and rearranging what we're growing here. We do not have the water to support these water thirsty crops, but they are so ingrained in the culture, in the economic stability of some of these communities. So it is a significant conundrum.
Did you say they're also deeply involved in private capital?
Well, capitalism that's a whole other presentation. Yeah, yeah, this is good. This is a good conversation to have after. Let me just get through a few more here, just to look at where the water comes from. So it comes from two primary sources. Our water here in New Mexico comes from our surface water, and that's what we're talking a lot about in the compact. Rivers and streams and springs, this is all what's coming from the snowpack of the mountains, right? That then are stored and able to be used throughout the state, mostly managed through water rights, senior and junior water rights in the state. It's the major portion of the water that's used in New Mexico. You know, we have less in dry years when we've been having significant less, and it supplies both our cities and our irrigators, the many, many acequias in the state. Anybody know how many acequias we have in New Mexico? 700. Not great, it's not a huge amount. And again, I come from an acequia community that is so unique, the only one that serves both domestic. And my mother told me this summer, I mean, I knew it, they had to cut back on irrigation days, and they had to cut back on their water for the domestic water users. So they had to turn off the water at night, not use it. Where else do we get water? Groundwater in our aquifers. So this is what's pumped from wells. Some aquifers get recharge. So from those surface water, the rivers, you know, it can come down, but we're pumping more out than it's recharging. Plus, we don't have the best data water measurement in the state to really know how much is being is coming, how much we have left in the ground. But there are parts of the state that are a bit of the canary in the coal mine. How many of you are familiar with what's happened in Portales and Clovis? So their aquifers have significantly, the Aguala aquifer is drained to such a degree that Portales has literally no water left. Clovis had seen this coming, and with the Air Force being there, they saw it coming and then, worked to collaborate to help share the water and to protect that aquifer coming into Clovis, but Portales is in a different situation. So there are wells throughout the state that have run dry. And those that can, like you said, that someone said, like, if you're not feeling the impact, and the water continues to come up, you just feel like it's always going to be there. But communities in South New Mexico have discovered that it's not always going to be there. I'm looking at our time knowing that we only have about 15 minutes. So I'll move through here.
Why are the labs involved?
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know. I know that, the Air Force in Clovis, Cannon Air Force Base, they wanted to protect their what's happening there. So they really saw what was happening and decided to get involved. Why, Kirtland or Los Alamos are not as involved, or Sandia, I can't tell you. So right now, as I've shared, we're in one of the driest periods in the last millennium. New Mexico's best scientists project an average of 25% less stream flow and groundwater recharge within the next 50 years, if not more. And we've the stream flow, and that's again what we see, why we're seeing this downward trend. The stream flow under the bridge at Ottawa to Los Alamos has already dropped 25% since 1988. So what has been in play is a kind of carrots and sticks approach in New Mexico. In terms of the Interstate Stream Commission and the Office of the State Engineer, these are the two agencies that can, the ISC puts forward water plans for the state. The Office of the State Engineer is responsible for those penalties for like the water permits, like who's using what and what can happen there. So the carrots approach is planning to manage our water better. As I mentioned, the Water Security Planning Act was passed in 2023 unanimously. And what it puts forward in that act is that there will be regional water planning in place. So based on geological reality, so not just like, political boundaries of the state, but where, portions of the Rio Grande and based on the aquifers, that region, can come together and look, okay, so how much water do we have coming into us? How can we plan to share that within our community? There will have to be compromise and cooperation across those sectors. The unfortunate thing about this planning is that it's off to a little bit of a rough start. The ISC just had their commission hearing. They put forward their rule, which is, how is this going to happen? Like, how are we going to do this planning across the state? And it was thin and inadequate, to say the least. So they just had a commission hearing for the Interstate Stream Commission last week. The water advocates put forward testimony and public comment, as did many nonprofits that look at water across the state to try to see if it could be a little bit more robust. I think the commissioners were very engaged. So that's good news, and are wanting to have the ISC, will likely be wanting the ISC to revise that rule so we can get that going. There has, as I said, been a little bit funding, but not near enough to get each of these regions the resources they need to really do the water planning for the state. This will be a short legislative session, only 30 days. We'll likely not have this session to really put forward a lot of new money. Next year, the next year with the 60-day session, we may have a chance again. And we all recognize that what's happening federally is impacting the state. So I know it's going to be a tricky legislative session just to take care of some of the basic needs that we have in the state. we will continue to argue that if you don't have water, you don't have anything.
What
So
about transferring blame to the federal government?
it's really, in this issue, it really is a state issue. Yeah.
This is an in-state issue.
Yeah,
Involving all 50 states.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Why has the federal government?
Yeah,
why
I
is the
don't know.
federal government so
Oh, there's,
against
yeah,
it?
that's a great question, and I
So
don't,
transfer the
Yeah.
$100 million debt to those climate change
Yeah.
deniers.
yeah,
Maybe
I
the
wish,
city of
I
Rio
wish
Grande
that there
Compact
were
would
easier,
choose.
easy solutions to do that. I do want to, since you mentioned that, any of you, if you have a New York Times subscription, all last year, the New York Times did a series on groundwater issues across the country. New Mexico, yes, we're in a particularly dry state. This is going to particularly hit us hard, but we're not unique. Groundwater is, being overused and not being replenished across the state, Kansas in particular, states that we wouldn't think about having water issues, but they're having significant water issues.
I have a question. I read where farmers in the Midwest are being flooded twice a year. What about channeling the water to the north south?
Yes, I know, right.
Is that viable? Is there enough water to transfer?
The infrastructure that is not being supported just
But
now,
let's
that
say
would
if-
be significant.
Let's
Yeah,
say if channels were developed, would there be enough water to
Yeah.
water the southwest?
yeah, I don't know.
You think that's what?
I don't know.
I'll miss it.
Let me just finish with the sticks. So we talked about, here's the proactive work that we can do, and some of it is in place. I would say that this Water Security Planning Act passed in 2023 is really good legislation. It really is. Now we need to really carry through with that. The sticks are actually still a little important. We don't want all of these sticks to be used, but a few of them could come into play. Identifying and stopping illegal use. This is happening throughout the state, right? And some of our unfortunate agricultural friends are some of the biggest offenders, and so are some of our industries. The Niagara Water Bottling Company in Las Lunas, which was completely supported by the Las Lunas Village, their usage of water in that region has exceeded every time what they said back, right, when was this? Probably 5-10 years ago. Oh, we're gonna have this great water, bottling company, and it's gonna help the economy in Las Lunas. Incredibly, all the wonderful things, Las Lunas, Village Council, absolutely come on in. We're only gonna use this much water. Okay, you got it. Every time they've violated that, and they've exceeded their water usage significantly. So what is the state doing to help stop that illegal use? This is the Office of the State Engineer. They can do more. Giving more enforcement authority to the state. This is what the legislature can do. Practicing priority administration, meaning that our senior user rights have their water, and then it goes to secondary usage, which is usually municipalities. And then just revising the whole system of groundwater permits. There's a lot that can do there. So both of these carrots and sticks are actually kind of important and work hand in hand. We would obviously want more planning and being proactive. So just a reminder, if it hasn't been clear, New Mexico has statewide water issues well beyond this compact violation that we're looking at seeing. Our water usage exceeds allowable quantities. We have insufficient public and governmental attention. A lot of times our president at the New Mexico Water Advocates, Norm Baum, talks about political will, and that we just haven't had that political will where communities and individuals come to meet, where legislators are paying attention, and then this can really get pushed through, right? That the political will has not completely been there. Our reductions are continuing, the depletion is continuing. We're going to continue to protect self over community, but we know that there's a different way. The consequences are growing. So how can you help? This obviously, there was a lot more that I could have shared on just the complexity of water in the state, and from industry to the infrastructure, to the industries that are using it, and how that's shared in different municipalities, Lot more that I could have shared. I want to just talk about our website, and the New Mexico Water Advocates is an incredible resource, nmwateradvocates.com.org. Really has a lot of information about the basics of water, the water in New Mexico, water rights, water permits, and so forth. And our president, Norm Baum, writes weekly on issues that are coming up, and really there's a lot to learn on our website. The call to action that I would like to leave you with, if any of you picked up the handout that I had, this actually gives you literal talking points for 2 entities. The Office of the State Engineer is who needs to hear. You don't really think about, when we think about civic engagement or being politically active with our voice, we think about calling our legislature, right? Which is very important to call our legislators. We don't really think about, oh, what could I say to a state agency? But actually there is something you can say. And back to that carrot to the sticks, like they have to stop illegal use. It's happening. They have the means to do that. They may not have all the resources, and that's part of the funding that we're trying to get through, that they have more funding at the Office of the State Engineer to really manage what's happening statewide. But if they don't hear from everyday folks that, you know, there's illegal usage, there's overuse, we're going to violate this compact, which is going to cost us millions as taxpayers, please do something about that. So there's talking points for the Office of the State Engineer, as well as talking points for your legislator. And I just want to make this one point, and I'll get to you in a moment, ma'am. Right now, as you know, New Mexico is the only state. Our legislators are volunteer. They're not paid. They're not working really right now. The ones that are very, of course, they're like listening and they're doing things, but you don't have a means to contact them right now. Who does your work year round and pay attention is their legislative aides. And that's something that we don't think about so much. You know, we think about being in a relationship with our legislator. If you go to the New Mexico Find a Legislator page that the state of New Mexico has, you can find out who their aide is, who your legislator's aide is. It is now is a wonderful time to contact them and say, listen, I hope that my legislator is paying attention to the issues of water. So those talking points are there, and learning more, sharing with your friends. Yes, Santa Fe has put some good things in place, but you're going to be impacted just as much as anybody else if we violate this compact. And we still know that there's a future that we have to plan for less water. Yes, ma'am.
One of the most effective lobbies in the state is Think New Mexico.
Which?
Think New Mexico. So the mechanism that they use, they have a mailing list of 30,000 people. And I wondered if your website operated this way. So Think New Mexico, when a legislative issue comes up, they send you an email and you can immediately create a letter to your legislator.
Yeah.
So I've heard Peter Worth say, oh no, he said, Think New Mexico, I'm gonna get 30,000 emails on this issue.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if your website was set up that way.
Unfortunately, just there's a handful of us on the board, and our technical, we have a good website, but we're not that swift yet with just push a button and then the letter is generated. However, what I just shared with you is available electronically on the site. The links to the talking points, the links to find your legislator, all of those are there, and including the sample text. So it's just a matter of kind of moving that in. I do want to say that we're hearing more and more that emails are not effective. I mean, they can be, volume helps, but you know, they're not reading those emails. The phone calls are really the most important thing, talking particularly to those aides right now. And then again, once they're in session. So I think written letters, it would probably go in this order: calls, written letters, and then emails. But as someone, we were talking at the beginning here, right? This is happening to them too. I was like, sign up for our newsletter. Everyone is inundated with email. Yes, sir.
Are the aides accessible at the roundhouse?
I'm not sure if they're, I know they have offices there, if that's where they're all the time. And I don't know if they're publicly available right now. They might be. but really calling your aides is probably the best bet. Here is a QR code to that same thing. If any of you use that, you may not, but you can just go to our website, New Mexico Water Advocates. And okay, so we're like at an hour. What other questions do you have? Yes.
Would gray water make much of an impact?
In what way?
Well, municipal, I mean, if agriculture is using 80%.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the question there is how good is your city at recycling? And you know, most of our municipalities have some pretty good water recycling systems in place. If that's what you're kind of thinking about. Yeah, but I think I do want to point to these kind of two things that we can pay attention to the most. Changing our agricultural habits in the state and you know, looking at more regenerative farming and healthy soil options. There are really good efforts out there for large scale that can conserve water and looking at our crops, I think, but how we advocate for that is kind of challenging as individuals. What we need is some large scale cooperation. That's what the Water Security Planning Act is in place for, so that these regions can be at the table with the large agricultural users, industry, and the municipalities in a region. That's what they're supposed to do. So we want to activate that, get more money to the water planning so that can really happen. That's a huge solution.
What about youth employment, summer programs where they could go out and plant big trees?
All of these are, yes. Yeah.
Around the state, or these Chinese elms, that would cool things down. How about the
Sure. I mean, this is where the leadership in the state, and yeah, I mean.
These are the same models of the Chinese. They've developed 216 new pieces of technology to forest the Gobi Desert. This is not 10 square miles. We're talking cats here.
Thank you so much for being here. Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Visit our site, sign up, and continue to get more information. And thank you for bearing with a somewhat technical and maybe not. I know there's so much more we could say about water, but I really appreciate your attention and your care for this precious resource.